Welcome to the next edition of the Briefings Direct podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator. Today's Briefings Direct Security Innovations discussion examines how the rapid shift to remote work accelerated a rethinking of security and IT processes at a New York-based publishing organization. Rearchitecting the security posture of a business means adjusting work patterns and IT in ways that both reduce risk and heighten performance. But the trick is to do so without alienating workers, wherever they may be, and maintaining strong productivity. Here to share her story on how to digitally transform a traditional business structure, reduce risk factors, and preserve a highly creative culture is our guest. Please join me in welcoming Heidi Holmes, Senior Director, Information Technology Services at Hachette Book Group in New York. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. Nice to be here on the show with you, and I'm looking forward to this.
We're delighted to have you with us. Let's start by having you tell us a little bit about Hachette Book Group, or often referred to as HBG, and why you needed to significantly adjust your security objectives over the past couple of years.
HBG is one of the world's largest publishers. The United States branch is part of a larger global Hachette, and we have some very, very big authors like James Patterson and David Baldacci, and we literally print almost every kind of book you can think of. So our company is highly creative, very, very intelligent. And on a personal note, it amuses me because other IT organizations I've been in, I could send out, an email and never think twice about it. But here, you send out an email en masse, and you're going to be critiqued from every editor across the board. It's amazing. Even the CEO, he spots things that aren't quite in the right order. It's awesome. So that's Hachette. We're a pretty amazing company. So the last few years, I've been here since 2019. I came into, very different IT organization, and, the leadership in place was great. But around some of the security practices, we really had to mature, grow our business, grow how we monitor, maintain, and secure everything from the PC all the way to the edge.
Well, it sounds like in an organization like yours, being global and dealing with authors and editors and artists and graphics folks, that you were probably a fairly distributed organization to begin with, and then we had to move to more remote work. How did those things impact your digital transformation journey?
Sure. Yes, very, very diverse. So you have to have no two sets of tools are the same. Just in the IT organization, every single group has something unique about them, and we're talking, 5 people to 20 people. So we are an amalgamation, meaning we've acquired different companies over time. So our science fiction department is Orbitz, and they are amazing, but they operate in one way, where Little Brown Young Readers, which is all of our young literature, operates completely different. So it is almost like IT for a ton of small businesses that operate in a large business structure. It's pretty interesting. So once they were diversified to begin with, but once people started removing to home, it became even more critical, because the way traditional IT was moat and castle, and we had to protect ourselves that way. You have the best firewalls, you protect anything, but once you're inside the castle, everything is loose. Once people started moving to home, then all of their data lived on their laptops. Everything was, how do you manage that? What do you do to get your arms around that? And that's where our challenges were once everyone moved to home. And speed of access. Because if you're used to, the moat and the castle technology, you have high-speed connection in every office to all of your data. Well, what happens when you're trying to access that data from home?
Well, it sounds like, Heidi, that you have a set of constellations of different businesses and cultures and probably legacies of use of IT. And to corral that all together, you almost have to be a managed service provider as an IT organization. Is that fair? And were you set up to be an MSP, even though that was sort of what the requirements were?
From the overall organization, my side that I manage is help desk, infrastructure. So we serve up all of the data, all the data center stuff, and the cloud data, and then the cybersecurity portion. So from my side, you know, we kind of were set up that way to service different groups and different platforms and just a wide range of tools. From the larger organization of IT, it's amazing the way that they've taken that and built tools to service the overall organization. And some of them are, I don't know, kind of complex how you access the same tool. And then that's where we come back in with the security and managing, the compliance, the security, how they access what data inside of a tool, and how it's unique to each of those separate entities. It's fascinating.
All right. Well, you had to have more of a focus on endpoint security as you were moving to support this distributed and remote work requirement set. You've also had to look at transforming digitally to make those data points and performance numbers work. A lot of times in the past, people would architect their IT and then they'd add on the security. Did you try to simultaneous engineer for security and IT productivity and digital transformation, or maybe even put security first? Is there a new way of doing security from your vantage point, given your responsibilities?
There is a new way of doing security. So when I entered, security was kind of a bolt-on after the fact. We've already built this tool. Have we tested it? Or this application, have we tested it? What have we done with it? Where now we're at the ground floor. As new projects are coming up, the teams are coming to us from a cybersecurity standpoint and saying, what's the best way for us to secure this? We're meeting with vendors, so outside SaaS and providers, things like that, making sure that they fill out the security forms that they need to, making sure that their architecture and best practices match with what we're looking for. And we have had a few where it would have happened, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they might have chosen a different vendor, but we found out early in the game they weren't doing things compliant, that they didn't have security as their first thought. So, and also the balance with that and building in security, as I tell everybody here, cybersecurity is about being a speed bump and not a roadblock. So everything that we do, it should be, you just notice, you slow down to that 30 miles an hour so you don't bottom out your car and you keep going instead of, it's a full stop, because there's no productivity if we have to come to a complete stop and there's very manual processes. We need to keep moving.
Right.
So now it is at the ground floor, though. We're there.
Of course, if you have a security breach, then that's one way of coming to a full stop. So you need to have a balance between risk, balance of risk disaster, but also maintain that productivity and creativity. What have you learned the past couple of years about that balance? Has it changed with the remote work, and how does digital transformation give you the tools to have the insights to reach that balance better?
Sure. So one of our tools, why I'm here, is Bitdefender. We're looking at the dashboards all the time. We can see what's commonly going on. The tools are great for the digital transformation because it's on every one of our computers, on all of our servers, monitoring it, and it automatically blocks. If it sees lateral movements, it will block and halt those or delete certain files. It's really given us that advantage, and it gives us the ability to look at what's going on, because if we see a large increase, then we can look into our other tools that complement Bitdefender and say, what are we seeing on our firewalls? What are we seeing on our SIM? What are we seeing on our email, filtering? Do we see a coordinated attack across all of our fronts, or is this just the run-of-the-mill type attack? So it helps us be proactive of something that's going on for us, and it's been a great opportunity.
And in addition to being proactive on seeing when things happen, you also want to perhaps get out there and react to that swiftly. Is there a way that you've adjusted to this remote workforce and those laptops on people's home desks rather than their work desks inside the moat? Is there a way for you to take the information you're getting from your dashboards and be more actionable with it?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, if we see a large number of attacks, if we see, even if they're stopped, uh, we go and we open up a help desk and security ticket, and we call and reach out to the user. If it seems to be something that keeps trying to install something or trying to attack others in the environment, we remote deactivate them. So, and then we just make them ship their laptop in so we can take a closer look, and we ship them out a new one. We don't play games in anything in our environment. It's better to stop it at the source and move on. But yeah, the tools give us all of that ability to get ahead of it, and we've developed a team that is constantly monitoring 7 days a week our dashboards, looking for any correlation, anything ahead, and then working with us to automate or page us out if it's something that needs to be acted on quicker.
And Heidi, how has your background as a network engineer helped you at the digital transformation and security confluence, if you will? Have you been able to bring more of an architect's perspective to how you're modernizing your IT and security?
Yes, I have. So for the past more than 20 years, I've kind of worked in an architect, network engineer, network security engineer role. And the biggest thing that I've learned is we go back to the risk, understanding what a business risk is, how to mitigate that or isolate the risk, but also understanding the business you're working with. So part of architecture isn't designing the fanciest, most secure tool because that's how you get the roadblocks versus the speed bumps. But you have to learn the business, learn the people, know where the risks are, and then architect around that to say, okay, stage one, we see in our transformation, we see that we need to move these things to the cloud, or our most vulnerable systems need to be put isolated because maybe some of them might be end of life and we can't do certain things with them. We're going to move them over to, something like a layer 2 firewalling with, intrusion prevention and monitor it that way. Maybe some of our websites are larger and we need to do something with that. So we might put, some sort of a web application firewall in front of it. But you have to lay it out in stages. And the easiest way to architect and build that is first get the business buy-in and know what the business needs. And then you start designing where's your quickest hits that cause the least impact and give you the most security, so the biggest bang for your buck. Let's start there. Let's hit the quick hits while we're still planning out the other things. And part of architecture is understanding when you build a process and a project that it changes. So it's a constant reevaluation. What's the latest tools? The tools in 2019 that I would have designed around what we're doing right now are not all the same tools that I'm working in at this point. Because every year, every 6 months, every month, something else is out there and a better way of doing things. And the zero trust architecture is, it was a little bit nebulous when they first started coming out with that, trust nobody. And everybody's like, why can't we trust people? It's like, well, not everyone's your friend. And even the computer next to you isn't your friend either necessarily.
Well, that's a perfect transition to my next question. In an organization like Hachette Book Group, people's goal is to communicate, to collaborate, to be
Sure.
creative, to be open. And so when you come to them with a security mentality of you need to shut down and be very suspicious and zero trust oriented, that creates potentially a cultural conflict. How have you been able to get people's buy-in on what you need, because behaviors is such an important part of security, and at the same time allow them to be as open and sharing as they probably are used to?
Sure. Um, so yeah, the mentality is, have the least, visible footprint of things that you're communicating on any given computer, but you also have to trust the communication tools and the general things that you use. Like we're on Zoom right now, or if you use Teams or something like that, those are common known, ports and IPs. We don't have to overthink it like 15, 20 years ago, where I need to know every port that Teams uses and qualify that. Our tools will automatically understand, and part of the AI built into them, that these are okay communication methods, and it's fine for us to continue to communicate that way. So there's an openness with video and communication and collaboration with a level of security. And staying away from very custom built tools to communicate will also protect you, because inherently a custom built tool usually needs extra updating, and the people who develop it don't always keep up to date. That also will protect you in a zero trust environment. But honestly, it's gotten so much easier with zero trust, because the one tool, I'll keep silent about the rest that we use out there, but just because it's a little bit, we don't want to share all of our secret sauce, but Bitdefender is fantastic for that. It's always monitoring. The artificial intelligence is telling us, and it's looking at patterns instead of always a specific port where you can lock people down and isolate them. So it can see a lot of the lateral movement, can see different firewall rules that are not industry standard, trying to pass through, and it's the only real way to go.
You're sort of describing what people have come to think of a security operations center as a service could be. Is that how you're starting to view something like Bitdefender, or is that a place you'd like to see it go, or where you'd like to go, where you have that sort of SOC as a service benefit all the time and everywhere?
Well, that would be fantastic. And we have spoken to Bitdefender a bit about this. We had a discussion, I want to say last week, the week before. Our transformation, uh, from my past experience, I've worked with SOCs, did a little bit of management of SOCs, and also had, uh, I don't know, just brought it into a new organization. What you see a lot of times with that is they give you a lot of data in any SOC. And traditionally, they'll overwhelm you with 3,000 alerts and events in a day. And you have a team of three and you're hiring a SOC to help you weed through them, but instead your team of three needs to remediate all of these things. Otherwise, they'll keep showing up and the SOC's going to keep reporting it. And then it becomes completely useless to you. Where the modern SOCs, and a lot of what I understood from the Bitdefender side is they're using more AI to filter out to the things that are meaningful instead of every single thing that comes across your board, and help you kind of dive in quicker where there's a bigger problem. And a SOC can be a benefit instead of a hindrance to a team, because the teams are always trying to remediate their problems already. They only need to know about the things that are brand new major holes, because, patching everything else should take care of that. Other thing I wanted to mention on SOCs, yeah, back to our transformation. We started out, I mentioned, SIM and having, the different dashboards, and it takes a while to bring a security team up to speed on what they should be watching, what's meaningful even to you, and then to fix the problems that they're finding, like doing scans and things like that. So the last few years since I've been here, we've been training security staff to do just that. where when a SOC comes into play now, they're already they're already security experts at that point, and everything is meaningful. Sometimes you can take the jump to a SOC too fast.
Right, of course. Now, I'd like to revisit what you mentioned a moment ago about tools. A lot of what we hear in the marketplace is that people are resisting tool sprawl, that too many security tools are not a good thing. But they also want tools that will integrate, that will play well together.
Yep.
How are you looking at that balance, another balance between having the right number of tools, but also tools that are integrated in advance so that you don't have to worry about either integrating them or having them be a hindrance?
Yep. I literally just said no to a couple tools because it was more sprawl and we need to use our tools right. Tools should be um, useful. They should give you information you don't already know, or they should coordinate multiple things into one tool so that you can easily discern where the problem is. So if it doesn't have multiple uses and it's not cost effective, then we don't want it. It has to be a very specific reason we would look at that. So every tool we look at, um, easy to use. It needs to, because we can't send somebody to 3 weeks of training and then have them be the only one who knows it. And we can't train a second person when they go on vacation what uses the tool. And it has to be automated. It has to be able to page us if it hits certain thresholds. All of that needs to be set up fairly, fairly quickly. Because we take holidays or things like that. There's always less eyes on dashboards. You know how that can go. And we need to know that something's going on and we need to get paged and woken up and brought back to the dashboard. So that's what we're looking for. The tool sprawl, everybody has a tool that they want to sell you. Everybody. And it needs to work for on-prem. It needs to work in the cloud. It needs to give us all of that information. It needs to work in your home to tell me what's going on in your laptop. Just, yeah, that's what we need for our tools.
Right. Whenever you ask folks to qualify and quantify how their security is working, the number one response is, well, we're not getting hacked. So that's good. But because you're involved with not just security, but IT and digital transformation, I think there's probably more ways that you can measure the effectiveness of your security approach in terms of productivity, in terms of team collaboration, in terms of how your IT support group is able to support your end clients and end users. Do you have any ways of looking back and saying, we made good choices, good decisions, and we can prove it by blank? How do you measure your success in digital transformation vis-a-vis also considering the security?
As far as the users go, collaboration, the easiest way for us to tell is the number of help desk tickets that we get. Because if the users aren't calling us because they can't work on their computer, either because they've had an attack or because they've, they just can't use it because it's too locked down, that's a good measure. And if we're not seeing a proliferation of viruses and malware in our environment, then those metrics are great for us. And we're constantly watching them, we're updating, and we're updating our senior leadership in the company and where we're at with those metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been amazing.
Let's
Yep.
briefly hit on costs. We're also seeing in many organizations the need to do more for less. And is there a way for you to balance the economic side of the equation with these metrics of success?
There are. So with the metrics for success, if we purchase tools that help us get ahead of a problem and we don't have any downtime or loss of productivity, that is our one way of doing that. So you weigh the risk, you weigh the knowledge, and back to the tools that do multiple things, easy to use, and cost effective. It's huge for us because I don't have to train extra people, which is cost. I don't have to have extremely skilled people. And I can weigh the cost and the amount that we're spending in our security budget and IT and say, we are doing the right thing for our people with the right level of protection, and our downtime is, individual users, not systems. So that's how we measure it. Productivity, not lost time, the ability to shift if there is a problem. And back to the training, I want to say recently we had a security um, incident. It was turned out to be something from very old, like more than 10 years old, that was transferred to our environment, and we found it with our tools, and we shut down a portion of the network, and because of the training, so they lost that productivity for, I want to say, about 2 hours while we investigated. A couple of years ago, we would have had, VPs, down our throats, like, why can't we do this? But because we've trained our team so well, it was literally, uh, okay, let us know when it's available again. We want to support you. We'll work on something else. I'm like, I don't understand. It was great. So having the tools, having the cost, measuring what it is, and being able to measure all of our training and practice and knowledge, people are behind us. They want a secure environment, and they're willing to pause if they need to for a little bit while we look at things.
You had a speed bump, not a car crash, so that's a really good indicator.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, let's before we end, just look to the future. I've heard a few words from you, Heidi, like automation and AI and SOC as a service. What new challenges do you foresee, and what are the best tools or approaches for you to meet them, and maybe even proactively?
Um, the problem with this is we don't know what we don't know what the next security problem is to anticipate. So you need to be prepared for everything. You need to stay ahead as any sort of a leader in this field and just listen, watch the articles, and be prepared to pivot when it happens. The AI and the tools, um, the AI is great because it's looking, like I mentioned all along, patterns. It's not the old days where it would look for a signature. So somebody would do something, they'd apply a specific signature and it'd only catch that. It's looking for the pattern and then correlating the pattern. And we're getting so many less false positives off of that now because it doesn't look for like just one minor anomaly. It looks for a pattern of anomalies and then it might block. And there still will be some false positives off of that because there's old applications out there. Tools that we use, like love the Bitdefender console because it delves into so many things. I personally look at the executive dashboard in a really regular time frame because out of all of our tools, it is one of the best and the easiest to drill into because I can say, wait, we saw a spike in viruses. I click on it, even though they're blocked, it shows right there in the line. If any of them got through, then we'd raise the flag, but it's blocked. But who and where? Um, and I can click and it'll show me what machines, it'll show me what it was trying to do. And that is the best way to stay ahead. And that is part of the automation is automatically blocking. So our firewalls automatically block or quarantine or do what it needs to. We get automated alerts that ring our cell phones that send us messages depending on what it is. And we have bridges. So and we also have things that are automated where we can automate like traditional patching or 0 days or anything that comes up. We have that all scheduled to go. So that's not a manual process anymore.
Well, great. Last question, Heidi, before we sign off. For those who are also going on that journey where they want to change the way they've done security, where it becomes simultaneous to and maybe even in advance of IT decision making or IT architecting, what advice do you have for them now that you've gone through this quite to a large degree? What words of advice do you have for people who can make security part and parcel with their other IT and digital transformation activities?
Get to know your business. Learn what your business is doing. And then if while you're learning that, start with the fundamentals. What are you doing well in your business right now or in your security? I mean, do you have a good, malware protection firewall on your laptops, things like that? Start with your servers, with your laptops, every device in your environment. That's an easy place to start. Make sure your patching is up to date. And then you can start looking, a little bit deeper. Vendors, understanding what your vendors are doing. Just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean it's secure. It is not the same thing. So you need to understand where you're putting your data and what your people are doing. And that goes back to learning the business. And I would say lastly, shadow IT. So because everything can go to the cloud, every business is going to try, every department is going to try to find their own tool in the cloud, but they won't necessarily vet it the way your IT security organization will. So back to getting to know the business, gain their trust, and help them by giving them speed bumps and not roadblocks. That's my advice.
Awesome. Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to a sponsored Briefings Direct discussion on how the rapid shift to remote work accelerated a rethinking of security and IT processes at a New York-based publishing organization. And we've learned how Hachette Book Group successfully digitally transformed a traditional business structure, reduced risk factors, and preserved a highly creative culture. So please join me now in welcoming, or thanking, I should say, our guest. Thank you to Heidi Holmes, Senior Director, Information Technology Services at Hachette Book Group. Thanks again.
Thank you. It's been great talking with you.
Same here. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing series of Briefings Direct discussions. A big thank you to our sponsor, Bitdefender, for supporting these presentations. And also a big thank you to our audience for joining. Please pass this on to your IT and security communities, and do come back next time.